This week on The Impact.
It doesn't make any sense to build more things that we can't maintain.
House Democrats roll out a massive transportation package fueled by a gas tax increase and other fees.
Why now is because we've got pressing transportation needs where we need to make investments, and the longer we put them off, the more expensive they become.
Our state's still shut down. This is the wrong time to be putting forth another tax on the people.
$26 billion for road maintenance, culvert removal, bridge replacement, and more.
We have 10 years to do the culverts, and we can't afford to start in year 3 or 4 to make that happen.
No matter what is done on this with the funding, this is not something that's going to happen tomorrow or this year. This is years away from going to fruition.
Hello and welcome to The Impact. I'm Mike McClanahan. The most substantial in state history. That's how the chair of the House Transportation Committee describes a comprehensive funding package to roll out over 16 years. House Democrats released a $26 billion transportation package separate from the 2-year budget, with funding for road maintenance, culvert removal, bridge replacement, ferry upgrades, and a cash infusion for public transportation systems. The package also includes money for communities impacted by transportation-related pollution or infrastructure. It would raise the state tax on gasoline by 18 cents per gallon and 21 cents for diesel. In addition, the plan would create a new carbon fee, which could also increase the price of gasoline. And the package would reportedly increase license plate fees by 50%, among various other rate increases. Unlike many large transportation packages, the proposal in the House would not involve issuing any bonds, which means it could pass with a simple majority vote. Joining me now, House Transportation Committee Chair, Democratic Representative Jake Fye of Tacoma, and Ranking Republican Member, Representative Andrew Barkis from Olympia. The first question is for both of you, but let's start with Representative Fye. This is a very big proposal. It comes as the state is still under the crushing economic pain of the pandemic and an uncertain financial future. So I guess the main first question I've got is why now?
Well, why now is because we've got pressing transportation needs where we need to make investments, and the longer we put them off, the more expensive they become. When you have a minor repair to a road and you don't do it, it gets to be a bigger problem. So we're doing it now also because it provides some economic benefit, hopefully, particularly across the state of Washington, for investments in preservation and maintenance that puts people to work. So it's challenging, I get that, but at the same time, we've got needs for replacing culverts, which is over $3 billion, updating our ferry system, over $2 billion, a backlog of $10 billion for the next 10 years in preservation and maintenance for the state system, of which we're investing not that much, but a substantial amount. So we've got a big backlog, and it only gets worse if we delay. And
Representative Barkis, your response.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to the chair for this opportunity to discuss this important topic. I disagree, of course. The timing is tough. I will agree with the chair in the sense that we do face all the things he just listed out. However, this is the wrong time to be putting forth another tax on the people right now in our state who are just reeling from the economic impacts of the COVID crisis. Our state's still shut down. We still don't know exactly when these next phases are going to happen. And it's just when I'm talking to constituents out there, the last thing that they want to be talking about is tax increases. Now, I think, and we'll hopefully talk a little bit more about this, I think we have time. I think we have already shown that we can do a great job budgeting. We've already looked at various ways of reprioritizing. I think that should be our focus during this session right now. The governor keeps pausing these projects, and if they're so critical to get done, he keeps pausing them. And I think the chair and I agree that that's not the right thing to do. But in the fish passage, we've got 9 years left on that injunction. So we have some time. So there are things that we can do to look at right now to deal with this within the confines of the revenues that we have. Then look at down the road of what we need to do to address the big issues of the growth and the burdens on our transportation infrastructure, and have a broader conversation, bipartisan conversation on revenue.
So Mike, if I could just add, so we looked at the impact of this for the gas tax. Everybody would need to pay a penny a mile for this gas tax, assuming 18-mile gallon vehicle. So while it sounds like a big number, the net effect is small when you consider the benefits and also the costs of waiting and letting roads further deteriorate.
Although that's accurate, I would say there's a cumulative effect that we also should be talking about here. 18 cents is just one part of this $26 billion proposal. We have fees involved. We have a carbon fee. We have another bill that's coming through on the low carbon fuel standard. All of these things will add up. And that's where we're getting at this dollar figure. And I think that it is true, and more data is coming along with this, but it's a cumulative effect. And when we're talking about policies that are affecting those, who least can afford to have it affect them, this is one of those ones right now that this makes it tough.
Representative Fye, if we could go back over some of the specific proposals or areas where money is needed in the transportation sector, that this particular proposal is aimed at directing funds. What would this pay for? What problems would this solve?
So let's just take one example, I think, which is indicative about this whole argument. We have been working with Oregon legislators to replace the current Columbia River Bridge, which is in danger of failing. Back in 2013, we had an opportunity to get a lot of federal money, and the price tag for citizens in the state of Washington was about $500 million. The Senate Republicans at the time rejected that. And here we are now where the cost is $1 billion for the state's share. And some uncertainty about that, especially uncertainty about whether the federal government will step up, and as they did back in 2013. So the consequences of waiting can be really significant. That's a critical project for not only people in that area, but the whole mobility and freight mobility in particular in that geography. And the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets, the more complicated it gets, the higher the prices to buy property to put the new bridge through. So that's just one of the examples of the urgency of this, Mike.
And if I could just, I know you probably want to respond to that, Representative Barkis, but if I could build that into this question. You've got a court-ordered culvert removal project with a deadline, the West Seattle Bridge out of commission. You've got the talks with Oregon about replacing the Columbia River Bridge, and reportedly public transportation systems around the state starving for funding because of the pandemic. How would you propose addressing those issues?
Well, back to the chair's point, I agree. I mean, the Columbia River crossing has been a conversation for many, many years. And unfortunately, there have been stumbling blocks. We stood to lose, I believe it was $50 million in federal funding if we didn't act, which we did last year, to reopen that office to get things going. No matter what is done on this with the funding, this is not something that's going to happen tomorrow or this year. This is years away from going to fruition. So whatever those costs that are extrapolated over a period of time are going to be there, and there's something that are going to have to be built into, whether it's land acquisition or anything else. The other point that I would say, Neil, too, is we talk a lot about the federal government, and we've heard from the governor saying that we need to wait for the feds, all this money from the feds. Transportation's kind of always been left out of that. We've seen it's been years since the federal government has increased their gas tax. But now we just went over some dollars that are coming to the state of Washington as part of this. And with the new administration in place, there is more talk about federal money. So if that's the case, again, I think it buys us some much needed time to get through the current crisis to deal with. As far as the fish culverts go, yes, the injunction, we have been dealing with that. Both the chair and I have worked diligently the last couple of years on the budget to make sure that we were following through, making sure that they're prioritized and doing a better job of getting these things done. They're stating, and what the governor stated, is that if they don't receive the $750 million now in this biennium, that we won't be able to complete the timing of it. That may be true, but we don't know that completely. We have 9 years ahead of us. And I also think that with our great partnership with the tribes in Washington State, and the fact that they're also dealing with this crisis that has impacted their tribal communities, that we could have a conversation. And we could have a conversation about what we're going to do to continue this commitment to the salmon recovery, to make sure these culverts are getting done, but buy us a little bit of time to be able to use the dollars that the governor's proposing this year on the things that the chair mentioned before, maintenance and preservation, projects, et cetera, and deal with this as time allows after we move out of the COVID crisis.
Representative Fye, this plan is sold as a way to support economic recovery and create jobs, but critics say this is going to put additional strain on Washington families and businesses during an extremely difficult time, particularly lower income households. Do you think the boost from construction and other economic windfalls will offset the financial hardship to families?
Well, every situation is different. What's unique in this proposal is we will, going forward, target investments into those communities and target programs to encourage women and minority-owned businesses to be able to participate in the opportunities that are created through this, and providing for more apprenticeships into disadvantaged communities. I just have to say, Mike, we have 10 years to do the culverts, and we can't afford to start in year 3 or 4 to make that happen. And that money, $720 million, I think it is, for the next biennium, because of our down revenues for COVID, we will be taking that money from projects, because we have a legal and moral obligation to fulfill that. That was a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, and that is firm. You can hope that the tribes might be willing to negotiate on that, but I haven't seen any indication of that, and I don't understand why they would do that, because we've taken so long to get started on this work and fought the initial ruling at the lower court level. So I don't think we're in a position to negotiate. I think we got to do what we're obligated to do.
Representative Barkis.
I would just add, Mike, thank you. I would just add, COVID changes all, and we're hearing it all throughout the session. We've been hearing it for months and months. When we did the budget last year, we didn't anticipate where we would be today. COVID has changed the conversation. We've had to make adjustments to help our tribal communities. For example, the governor's proclamation on the allowance of the gas compact money to be used for non-transportated related issues, which has been a help to the tribal community. I'm not saying that this is something that is going to happen, but it's something I think should be talked about. Getting back to the construction and creating jobs, true. I am glad that there is this focus on minorities and women-owned business apprenticeships. These are all great things that we have been working towards. I know that the agency has been working on this for many years, and there will be some benefit to that. But shovel ready is a misnomer in the state of Washington. These projects, what we found last year in our budget, a lot of times it's not necessarily the money component, it's the ability to get around our own regulatory environment, our own roadblocks that we put in to get these projects done. So having shovel ready, getting impact to our communities right now during COVID by getting these projects going, I think is a little bit misleading. We have projects right now that are working, and we can get those going. Why are we pausing those? Why would we even be considering doing that when those people are working in good union paying jobs? And lastly, I think the chair will probably get to it. We do have a shortfall. We've got a budget challenge ahead of us, but we did get some better news in our revenue forecast with regards to the monies that we have to work with. And with the overturning of I-976, which was the total focus of our budget work last year, a proposed $500 million shortfall that we do not have to deal with now. That money is back into the equation, and it allows us some flexibility to work within our budget process a little bit better than we were anticipating even 6 months ago.
So, Representative Fye, and I want to come back to that, the initiative that Representative Barkis just mentioned in a bit. But first, does this proposal, your package, does it include targeted investments for highway congestion relief? And if so, which areas are targeted?
So we've got an abundance of requests. The ranking member and I asked members for projects that far exceed the number that's in this proposal. They're across the state. I just would point to one area where I think there's a great opportunity on the economic development side, and that is all the investment that is going to be occurring in the Bellevue area for jobs, and whether it's Amazon or Facebook or another technology-oriented company. They're going to need some help from us to facilitate the workers that will be now moving to Bellevue, or new workers coming in from out of state that will be there. So that's one obvious great need. But there's ones across the state of Washington that members have asked for. But this proposal focuses first on doing the smart thing, which is preserving what we have. I think the ranking member would agree with that. It doesn't make any sense to build more things that we can't maintain. And previous legislatures have really neglected this. That is one of the big, I think, points about this proposal, is the emphasis is on taking care of what we have.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mike. I would agree with the chair. Yes, we should finish what we started. We should have our emphasis there. I'm concerned because, when it comes to congestion relief and such, policy goals, WASDOT, the department, there might be some problems there with things lining up in that. I will commend the chair for the way he did structure this proposal differently. It fills buckets, and those buckets then give us the ability to look at these projects that have been submitted to us and go through and prioritize and have the eyes on and hands-on ability to do that. It also addresses, our counties and our cities, which is extremely important, the up and down the chain. So I like the way this is set up. It's just, again, the timing of it and the breadth of what it is. Maybe over a period of time we can find this, and I'm sure we will, but it's tough.
So state voters approved a measure to lower car tab fees by a large margin in 2019. This proposal appears to increase the rate for vehicle tabs for cars and motorcycles by 50% based on a one-pager that was handed out. Is that accurate? Does this increase the rate for license plate fees?
There is, I believe I think it's 2029. I may not have the year correct, but it's around there, that there is a $10 increase in the standard fee that people pay when they register their vehicle. There is also an adjustment for other fees that it's not a significant amount of revenues, but there are other fees that are raised. And what we took a look at is when those fees were last raised. Some of them haven't been raised since 2015. So we put a small increase in those just because things are more expensive nowadays. And so, but it isn't the major portion of the revenue increase. It's all about carbon fees and the gas tax.
We've got just 4 minutes left, so if you want to respond briefly, if you could keep it to a minute or less if possible, please. Representative Barkis.
Do my best. Thank you. It's hard for us to respond quickly. The voters spoke. They passed 976. They were unhappy with the fees that were being proposed. We had to deal with that in our budgeting. The courts overturned it. Voters aren't happy about that. From a budgetary perspective, it helps with the current situation. But I think the voters are going to speak when they look at this whole thing. Yes, it increases fees again, maybe a minor amount, but it increases fees again. And any of those increases that they're looking at, they just had this whole thing happen, and they spoke and they said no. And so I think we will be, this is very precarious to our state's initiative process and such, that people will look at this and go, wait a minute, here we go again. We're now going to see another fee coming at us, another proposal. We might see some backlash from that perspective.
Okay, so we've got a minute and a half each to respond to this final question, if you could.
Okay.
So this doesn't include bond revenue, which means it does not need a 2/3 majority to pass. And you can pass this package with a simple majority. You explained that's why the package is funded on the front end. Does that mean this is likely to pass? Do you see this passing, Representative Fye?
Well, my speaker thinks it's going to pass. I would hope that this could be a bipartisan proposal at the end of the day. My rationale was largely associated with the fact that we have a wave of bond payments coming. And to the extent we do a lot of bonding with our fuel taxes and pay for them for a long time, we incur costs to set up the bonds. We incur debt service on those. And we need to reduce the amount of bonding that we do. It is also true that without a bond requirement, then it only takes a simple majority to move the bill. But it's my hope that members of the other side will see the benefits of a proposal. And this obviously is in the mix with the Senate's proposals and other things, and certainly Representative Barkis's ideas as we go forward. So there may be at the end of the day some bonding in there, but we felt that I think it was a good statement to make, is that we want to change the pattern by which we pay for projects and not have this wave of bond payments that are made for projects that were built 10 or 15 years ago.
Representative Barkis, if you could briefly, we've got just under a minute 30.
I appreciate the chair's fiscal conservative approach to and concern of the ever increasing debt load that our state is facing due to the bonding. Something we've been talking about. And as we've seen with Connecting Washington, the monies that were earned and raised to do that are going more and more towards bonding instead of the project. However, in this environment that we're in with the majority party and with the rest of the things that we're seeing being proposed in this virtual session and the challenges that we have in just the legislative process alone, it's very concerning to myself and to my caucus as far as not requiring a 2/3 vote. Simple majority vote, this could pass. I appreciate the chair, and I know he's sincere in his words when he says he wants to work together. We have demonstrated that as two members in the legislature who truly do that on a daily basis, and we will continue to do that. But I know that the powers that be may supersede what I'm able to do and push this thing through, and along with a lot of other taxes and things that we're seeing being proposed for this session. Again, the timing is just the wrong time to do that. I hope it's not what happens.
Well, we're out of time. I'm sure we could go on for much longer if we did have more time. I'd like to thank both of you very much for your perspective and for sharing your insight with our viewers. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.